friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Natalia Leigh. I'm an indie author and freelance editor, and today I'm going to be tackling the question, what is the difference between copy editing and proofreading? I do get asked this question a lot, and I understand why. A lot of people think that copy editing and proofreading are very similar, or in some ways are even the exact same thing, which is not the case. But again, I understand. I didn't even know the difference between copy editing and proofreading, a few years ago. I thought they were essentially the same thing as well. So if you don't know the difference, this is the video for you. I have my coffee here with me today, so we're going to enjoy coffee out of this amazing cat mug, and we're going to discuss copy editing and proofreading, what the differences are, if there are any similarities, so that you know, with your self-published book, of course, if you're traditionally publishing, your publisher will handle all this for you. It's always good to know what's going on with your team, but if you are self-publishing, it's really good to know the difference between copy editing and proofreading, especially if you are on more of a budget, because you want to know who you need to hire to make sure your book is the best that it can possibly be. Okay, so we're going to start out with copy editing. Now, with copy editing, I consider this the heavy lifting of editing. Now, copy editing typically has nothing to do with the actual story structure. That would be, a manuscript critique or a developmental edit, more of like a content edit would come first before the copy edit. So by the time you get to the copy editing phase, your story needs to be pretty much pegged down, you're happy with the story on the page, and now you need a professional to help you tell the best story you can. And I think that's an important distinction, is that some people believe that a copy editor is like a glorified spell checker. Some people might even say, why do I need a copy editor if, Microsoft Word tells me how to spell things? But a copy editor does way more than that. Yes, they're going to address misspelled words, they're going to address grammar, usage, punctuation, but then they're going to go so far as to do basic fact checking for you if you need that, especially if you're writing nonfiction. They're going to be looking for consistency. This is a big one. If your character is blonde on page 10 and then on page 105 your character has black hair and nothing has happened that should have been able to change that hair color, then that's a consistency error that your copy editor needs to catch. Or maybe, the house is green on page 5 and then suddenly it's a brown house on page 55. You get the idea there. So copy editors are also looking for consistency. And a big one with editors is using a style guide. Now, most of the time for fiction, your editor, your copy editor is going to be working with the Chicago Manual of Style. That is what I personally use with all of my clients. It is something that an editor should know. And of course, there are different style guides. So Chicago Manual of Style isn't the only one out there, but it is a big one in terms of fiction, especially here in the United States. So that is something else that your copy editor will be using and adhering to, is a style guide to make sure everything fits within the realm of kind of rules, I guess you could say, rules around what goes on the page, how it goes on the page, where are your commas, how is a semicolon used, all of that really good stuff. So a copy editor has to dig really deep, and they have to have these skills. They have to have, the detail-oriented kind of skill set to be able to catch all of these little things. Even something so small as, this is something I've been catching frequently, is let's say the difference between email and email. One has a hyphen, one does not. Both of them can be used, they're fine, but you need to be consistent across the board throughout your entire manuscript. So that is something that a copy editor would be looking for as well. Something else that some copy editors will do, this is something that I do. I have worked with a copy editor in the past who did not do this for me, so it really does depend on who you choose to work with. But something that I like to do for all of my clients when I'm doing copy editing is to help them with their phrasing, help them with transitions. If there's a really clunky or awkward sentence, I will help reword that for them. In some cases, I will even rewrite sentences just to help my author clients tell their story in the best way they possibly can. So that is something that some copy editors will do. They'll kind of take like a line editing approach which again is different from copy editing. There are so many different types of editing to learn about, which I think is really exciting. So some copy editors will go so far as to actually rewrite and reword things for their clients to make sure that the prose is as strong and smooth as it can be and their story is really leaping off the page while also being correctly spelled. So some copy editors will do that for you as well. Just keep that in mind. Not everybody does it. I enjoy doing that for my clients though. All right, coffee break. It's only 9 a.m. Granted, I drink decaf, so I guess it doesn't really matter what time of day it is. Okay, now we're going to talk about proofreading. Now, proofreading, I think, is the realm of editing that people know the smallest amount about. Because when you think of editing, I think copy editing is typically what comes to mind. Either like a developmental edit, which is more story content, or a copy edit, which is like the really heavy edit of what is like actually on the page. Proofreading is incredibly important though. So proofreading is going to happen at the very, very end of the process. So let's say you did your developmental editing, you did your copy editing, you're then going to move into book design / formatting. So the entire book is going to be laid out for print, and that is where the proofreader comes in. Many people think a proofread is just like the cheaper version of copy editing. I do have a lot of people reaching out to me, which I understand why this happens. You know, proofreading does have a slightly lower cost associated with it. So people think, oh, I'll just get the proofread instead. You know, it's more friendly to my wallet, which I understand, but it is not at all the same thing as copy editing. So the proofreading does come after the book has been designed, and depending on who you're working with, depending on your editor's preferences, you might either provide them with a PDF that's all laid out for print, because if you've never self-published before, when you're doing your paperback and your hardcover, you need to have a PDF, and that is what you're going to upload in most cases to your print-on-demand company. Now, of course, in some cases, you know, you can upload like a Word doc to KDP, for example, but the PDF is going to give you the clearest idea of what your final copy is actually going to look like. So some proofreaders will work with a PDF, and then some proofreaders prefer to work with an actual proof copy, hence where the word proofreader comes from. So the proof copy has been completely laid out for print. It's ready to go. So by the time this gets to your proofreader, that book is this close to publication. Especially in the traditional publishing world, and also sometimes in the self-publishing world, if a proofreader receives a manuscript and they start proofreading it and there are just way too many errors, that manuscript can get sent back in the process back to a copy editor, because it is not the proofreader's job to fix all of your colons and semicolons, to fix all of your hyphens / em dash errors, to fix everything that's wrong. You know, your spelling errors, your usage errors, your grammar errors. That is not the proofreader's job. The proofreader, a really good way to think about it is they are like quality assurance, because you have had all of your editing done, you have had all of your formatting done, your book cover is done, your book is ready to go out to readers. The proofreader is going to be, hi Mew, the proofreader is going to be the very last professional who gets their eyes on that proof copy to make sure that what is actually going out to your readers is what you want to go out to your readers. So the reason formatting, for example, is so important before it gets to the proofreader is because if your margins are off, if your line spacing gets a little bit funky in chapter 5, if suddenly in chapter 8 your scene breaks are a little bit different than they are in chapter 7, or suddenly your scene break is not indented, whereas throughout the rest of the novel everything is indented, that's something that the proofreader is catching. They're making sure that all of your page numbers are accurate, they're making sure that all of your headers are accurate, that the front matter and the back matter are on the appropriate facing pages, because in a book you have something called facing pages, meaning the left page and the right page. That might look opposite on the camera. So the left page and the right page, you have the, the gutter margin in the middle, so that is facing pages. Your proofreader needs to make sure that all the content is on the pages that it needs to be on, so they really are the person who is making sure that the product you're putting out into the world is the best that it can be. Your proofreader is not going to rewrite things for you. Your proofreader is not going to give you feedback on your story. Your proofreader is not going to say, hey, this is really awkward here, I think you could, rewrite this. They're not going to say, hey, you repeated this word 3 times on this page and it's starting to stand out to readers. They're not going to do any of that. They are simply working with what is on the page in front of them and making sure it is the cleanest that it can be. They're fixing any typographical errors. They're fixing any errors that slip through the copy editing phase, because that is bound to happen. Something else that's important to note about editing is that we are all human and things will slip through. I have never ever read a traditionally published book that did not have at least one typographical error. So do keep this in mind throughout your writing and publishing process, is that you don't have to be perfect. I have never seen a 100% perfect book. Even if it goes through the copy editing phase, which is going to catch the bulk of all the errors, and then the proofreading phase that's going to clean up the rest of it, if a couple little tiny things slip through, don't get worked up about it, it's okay. But by working with a copy editor and a proofreader, especially if you have the budget to work with a professional copy editor and a professional proofreader, you are giving your book the best chance at coming across really strong and being an incredibly high quality piece of work. Okay, my friends, so there you have it. The copy edit is essentially the really heavy edit, the heavy lifting, and the proofread is the polish. It is the quality assurance. It is the cherry on top right before you are ready to hit publish on KDP, or if your book, goes to print through a traditional publishing house. So if you have any questions about either copy editing or proofreading, you can feel free to leave them down below. If you have questions about other types of editing, like developmental editing or line editing, you can feel free to leave those down below. I don't believe I've made any videos on those topics, but it is something that I'd be willing to chat about if you feel like that would be beneficial to you. So yeah, just let me know. I am now going to dive back into my client edits. So if you guys are looking for an editor, either for content editing, copy editing, or proofreading, if you are looking for interior formatting / book design, come check us out at www.enchantedinkpublishing.com. My team has grown a lot lately. It's incredibly exciting. I don't know if I've really mentioned this to you guys recently, but I now have a team of editors working with me. I have a formatter who is doing all the book formatting for all the clients, and it is super exciting. We are in a really good place right now, and we are helping so many authors make their dreams come true. So if you are looking for an editor who feels like a friend, somebody who's really in your court, ready to support you and help you make your book the best it can be, come check us out and we would love to work with you. Okay, everybody, that is all I have for you today, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.